Welcome to Ryan's Leadership Lessons podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Stemen. Throughout my career, I've worn many hats, from managing people and projects to serving on for nonprofits and donning the jersey for various sports teams, as well as being a part of so many different wonderful companies. I wanted to share my knowledge, my leadership lessons, my insight, and this podcast is really created as a companion to my newsletter that I publish on a monthly basis on LinkedIn. And my thought was the newsletter is only so long. How do I expand upon these lessons that I'm writing about? And I thought maybe a podcast would be the best way to get the ideas out. And so this podcast, well, the first episode is going to be short, around 16 to 17 minutes long. The next one's maybe a little bit longer, but I hope that you can join me, learn a few lessons and takeaways to bring about in maybe you're in university, or maybe you're working hard at a job, or maybe you're managing a ton of people. Hopefully this will give you some leadership insight and lessons in a bite-sized format. But thank you for joining me. Welcome to Ryan's Leadership Lessons podcast. This is my first episode, so welcome. I'm excited to have you listening in on today's podcast. This is going to be my first one, so it's going to be rough, but it's going to sound great 3 or 4 years from now. But I wanted to welcome you. I want to create a podcast that is a companion to my newsletter, and I publish a newsletter on a monthly basis through LinkedIn, and there you can find leadership lessons in sort of a bite-sized format. And I wanted to expand upon those leadership lessons that are highlighted and exercised within LinkedIn. And I wanted to expand upon them, especially the newsletter number 1, which is about the Dale Carnegie book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And I think the newsletter I created, it just highlights kind of 10 big core lessons or memorable takeaways from the book. And I wanted to expand on each of those. And I think that this podcast will be shorter than maybe what will be formatted in the future, but I just wanted to go over some of those 10 memorable takeaways from the book and kind of talk about those or expand upon them. So Dale Carnegie published this book years ago in 1936, and from that time, it's expanded and now sold over 30 million copies. He's since passed away, but the book has lived on. And in fact, I mentioned this in my newsletter that even my grandfather, who's since passed away as well, this was one of his favorite books. So it's generationally positively perceived, and so I thought maybe I could expand upon that as my first newsletter and then go from there. And in this podcast, we'll go over the top 10 memorable takeaways from the book. So 1, be a good listener. So that be a good listener doesn't just happen in the business world, but it can happen in the classroom too. So, use your active listening skills. And a part of that's just being quiet and listening and reflecting whenever someone's talking in a room. Again, whether you're in a classroom or you're working, you can find yourself engaged with people. The better you listen, the more notes you take, the things that you can pick up on. It also shows that you're very engaged and you're actively understanding what the person in front of you is saying. So, one thing to do, one huge takeaway to be a better person is be a good listener. Second is show genuine interest. And that kind of goes hand in hand with being a good listener. You have to be engaged and interested in who you're talking to, and whether you're in sales or whether you're customer facing at a small business, or you're at a hotel and you're checking people in, or you're a customer success executive like myself. You want to show genuine interest in someone, and you want to be engaged with what they're saying and understand where they're coming from. Third, you want to encourage others to talk about themselves. So what you want to do is get them to open up about themselves. Start asking them questions about themselves. What do they like about their job or their family or their hobbies? Everyone's got a hobby of some kind. I don't care what it is, even if it's reading books, or if it's reading the newspaper, or if it's they're into crafts, or they're into sports on the weekend, or they're coaching their kids. Everyone's got some sort of hobby, so maybe start with that as far as an interest that they have, and get them to open up about themselves. People want to talk about themselves, and so when you're having a conversation and communicating with somebody, get them to open up about themselves and start to talk to them and unpack who they are as a person. That that will not only bring about a good relationship with you and the other person, but you have takeaways for later on. Like, let's say you run into this person down the road. You say, "Hey, how's your family? How is basketball coaching going?" Those sort of things can happen, and you can start to have a good conversation with somebody, and that just opens the door to other possibilities. And then that really runs in tandem with making others feel important. That's number 4 out of number 10. And make them feel important. Make them feel like you have a genuine interest in them. You want them to talk about themselves, and then you're listening too. So make them feel important. Um, Show appreciation and value what they're saying. I don't care who they are. Everyone wants to feel like they're important and that they're at the top of everyone's mind. So make that person feel important. And it could be as simple as smiling when you're talking to them. It could be as simple as just asking engaging questions, but make that person feel important. And one thing I've done is if I network with people or if I meet a customer for the first time, one thing I do to make them feel important is I will send a follow-up email or a follow-up message saying, "Thanks for your time today." You know, you go a little bit and make that little bit extra effort to make that person feel important, and that the conversation and the meeting meant something to you and meant something to them, and it was some of their time out of their busy day. So make them feel important at the end, and then you can also have that also opens the door for another conversation or another meeting. Number 5 out of 10 is give honest and sincere appreciation. So recognize and express genuine appreciation for others. You're going to foster a positive environment for people if you do that. So, celebrate people's wins, congratulate people. So let's say you've made a new connection. You're a good listener, you show genuine interest, you encourage that person to talk about themselves, you made them feel important. Now you've gotten a good rapport with that person. And what you should do is congratulate them, make them feel appreciated. Maybe they got promoted at work. Maybe they bought a new house. Maybe they got a puppy. Make them feel important and show some honest and sincere appreciation for what they're doing in their lives. That goes a long way with making a good connection. And again, the title of the book is How to Win Friends and Influence People. So you're trying to win friends. So maybe you have not a lot of friends, or maybe you want to grow your business or you want to grow your network. Think about those things. So all these 5 things we've talked about: be a good listener, show genuine interest, encourage others to talk about themselves, make others feel important, give honest and sincere appreciation. Those 5 things really start to add up, when you're trying to make friends and influence people. Now let's talk about the next 5. And this is where it kind of gets a little more engaged. So number 6, talk in terms of other people's interest. So you want to bring about other people's interest, right? You want to tailor a conversation to the topics that interest that person. So if I have a friend that is really into coaching basketball for their kids' sports team, so they're a basketball coach on the weekend, and I have another friend that's a soccer coach, I want to focus my conversation with my one friend who's into basketball. I want to focus on basketball. I don't want to talk about soccer or football. I know this person's really interested in basketball, so I'll talk about that. My other friend who's a soccer coach, I'll spend my time talking about soccer. And if I have another friend that's really into books and reading, I might just talk about books and reading with that person. So, talk in terms of what the person's interest is. So once you've asked questions and you're asking good questions to the person, try to find, little nuggets of information about them that you can come back to and start to talk about their interest. Yeah, I have a customer and she loves crafting. So when I talk to her, I talk about, the things I need to talk about from a customer and a business perspective, but I weave in there, how's the crafting going? I know that you and your daughter like to craft together. People want to hear about themselves and talk about themselves. So that was, I was listening to what she was saying, and now I'm bringing it back to number 6, talk in terms of other people's interest. And the 7th is huge, smile. Smile while interacting with people. And smiling, even if you're on a phone conversation and they don't see your face, smiling when interacting with people, it changes the way you talk. You sound more positive. You sound more optimistic when you're talking to them. So it goes a long way in creating a positive impression. When you smile at someone when they're talking to you, not in an awkward way or you're constantly smiling, but if you give someone a smile in response to things they say when it's appropriate, that goes a long way. You're not being flirtatious. You're not being disingenuous. You're honestly interested in what they're saying, so you smile or you laugh at their jokes. Those sort of things that helps you engage with that person. So smile when interacting with people. Number 8, remember people's names. Uh, this is so huge, and I think it gets said often and repeated a lot. But think about it from this perspective. Let's say you meet somebody for the first time and you bump into him again at the grocery store and you remember that person's name. You say, "Hey, Bob, it's good to see you again." If you're the first person to say it and you say their name right away, they know you remember their name. You've left a positive impact on them so that the next time you see them, you've remembered their name, not saying, "Hey, how's it going?" You didn't say their name because you don't remember it. In this situation, you say, "Hey, Bob, how's it going?" because you remember their name. So remember a person's name. It goes a really long way. I mean, think about it from your own perspective. When you see somebody and they call you by your name and it's correct, and you've only just met them, it goes a long way. And I think in that connection, and there's little tricks about this to work. You can work on remembering names. I like to put like a special note in Apple contacts under the person's name, and I say, okay, this is Joe Smith, and he's known as a basketball player, or he's known as a soccer coach, or he loves to read mystery novels, or he owns a car wash, whatever it is. You write those things down under their name so that you can remember certain aspects of them, and then it's like it automatically kicks in what their name is. And number 9 and number 10 are awesome. So you've built upon all these things, and let's review them real quickly. So numbers 1 through number 8, we're going to review real quickly. Be a good listener. Show your genuine interest. Encourage others to talk about themselves. Make others feel important. Give honest and sincere appreciation. Talk in terms of other people's interest. Smile when interacting with people. Remember people's names. And number 9, avoid an argument. And this kind of goes back to the idea of you don't want to be around toxic people. You also don't want to become friends with someone that's argumentative from the start, right? Maybe you meet somebody that comes into your business and they're argumentative about a problem, and you get to a point where you're in a better relationship down the road. That's different. But when you first meet somebody, you don't want to start into an argument. If you're trying to make friends and influence people, you want to keep things balanced. You want to find common ground. You want to try to understand the person's perspective. Where are they coming from? And you sleep better with a common ground approach, right? Arguments drag everyone down. You come away from it negative. It feels like a toxic situation. Avoid an argument when you're trying to influence people and you're trying to make friends. And number 10, admit your mistakes. People love honesty. Honesty, sincerity, the ability to admit mistakes and failures. I've failed so many times, it's not even funny. And the best thing about failures is you learn so much from them. They create a great story, and it also shows that you're human. And so admit your mistakes. That makes you feel like you're human. When you meet somebody and they feel too perfect, chances are they're hiding something, right? More than likely they're hiding something because they don't want anyone to see it. But if you come out and you admit a mistake, or you say, "Hey, I've failed at that before," or "I didn't do very well at that," you open yourself up to being an individual who will not lie, who will be honest, who will be considerate, and that puts you in a better place when you're trying to influence people, but also when you're trying to win friends, because they want to be around somebody that they can trust, right? That's at the end of the day, they want to be able to trust somebody. And even if that person isn't perfect, and no one is, they know that person's going to come to them and say, "Hey, I made a mistake here. How do we work it out?" Because again, you're trying to win friends and influence people, and that's the name of the book by Dale Carnegie. Published it in 1936. That's what's incredible. We're in 2024, And this book was published just under 100 years ago, and it's still important and it still has relevance today. Those top 10 takeaways from the book still are important. And I'll just go through the top 10 again and we'll wrap up the podcast. Again, my podcast is to be a continuation and a companion to my newsletters that I publish on a monthly basis. And this is newsletter number one, and this is podcast number one. So the title of the newsletter and the title of this podcast will be the same. Cheap book, priceless lessons. I bought the book. You can find this book used for so cheap. Sometimes people will give it away. Sometimes you can find it for $1. I found it for $4 on eBay. You can find used copies, new copies for very cheap and inexpensive, but the lessons in here are timeless, and they'll continue to be timeless because I think each of these 10 memorable takeaways from the book are going to continue to be relevant. Be a good listener. Show your interest in someone. Encourage others to talk about themselves. Have them open up about who they are. Number 4, make others feel important. Number 5, give honest and sincere appreciation and feedback. Number 6, talk in terms of other people's interests. What are they interested in? Have them talk about themselves and open up about their interest. Smile when you're interacting with people. It's going to help that conversation flow a lot easier. Remember people's names. That's hard to do, but it's a key takeaway, especially as you grow your network and you meet people and you try to influence people when you're selling to them, or if you're just trying to become friends with them, influencing them to be your friend. You want to be able to remember their name, remember their family's names, kids' names. That kind of stuff is important. Number 9, avoid an argument. You want to keep things very very positive, and you want to seek common ground if there is a misunderstanding. So keep things away from an argument when you first meet somebody, and find common ground if you don't agree on certain things, and that's okay if you don't. Admit mistakes. So show that you're an honest and sincere person, that you have high integrity, that you're not going to lie to this individual, and that's how you make a good friend. Is you follow these 10 things, and you keep using this list of 10 to continue that friendship. If I think about my close friends and even some of my newer friends, I try to go off this list. I'm listening to what they're saying. I'm showing genuine interest in what they're doing. I'm encouraging them to talk about themselves. I'm making them feel important. Later on, I might text them and say, "Hey, how was your kids' track meet, or how was your kids' basketball game, or how do you like that book? I read it a couple of years ago. It's great, isn't it?" So, and then I give them, honest and sincere appreciation when it's called for. Talk in terms of person's interest. Smile when interacting with people. That's huge. Remember their names. Oh man, remember their names. And then the last 2, avoid an argument and admit your mistakes. If you do these 10 things and you repeat them with a new friend, or you're establishing a new customer, even, these things go a long way, and you can build upon it, right? You make a friend, you build upon use these 10 steps to build upon that friendship, and you're going to come away with it, when you're 30, you're 40, you're 50, you're 60 years old, you're going to have a whole group of friends because you've done these simple tasks. And I think sometimes it's like, yeah, these things are obvious, but I think Dale Carnegie put them into a nicely formatted, easy to understand book. And I think that's why it's still a bestseller to this day. Thanks for joining the podcast.